My name's Adam. I'm 27, and I've always been the type who keeps his head down and works hard. Not because I love the grind or because I had some dream job that fueled me, but because I had a plan, a quiet, steady plan. Ever since I was a teenager, I knew I wanted to buy my own place. Nothing fancy, just a small house with a yard, a place where I could feel safe, something that belonged to me and me alone. No landlords, no roommates, no walking on eggshells. I started saving when I was 16, working part-time at a grocery store after school, stuffing bills into a second-hand lockbox I hid in the back of my closet. That habit stuck with me. Every job I had, waiter, warehouse, data entry, you name it, I put a chunk away and lived like I couldn't afford anything extra. Over time, that lockbox turned into a savings account. And by the time I hit 26, I had more than enough for a down payment in my area. Actually, with the way I lived, I was creeping up on being able to buy a modest house outright. That was the goal. No mortgage. No strings. My parents knew, of course. Not the exact number, but they knew I was saving seriously. I lived at home a bit longer than most, through college and even afterward. I paid rent, helped with groceries, fixed things around the house. I wasn't freeloading, but staying with them helped me stack more money faster, and they always said they were proud of how responsible I was, that I was the mature one. And they compared me to my older brother, Sean, every chance they got. Sean is 31. If I'm the quiet, responsible one, he's the exact opposite. Loud, impulsive, always chasing the next big thing. One year it was crypto. The next year he was importing cheap electronics and trying to resell them on Instagram. He's the kind of guy who thinks every job is beneath him, but somehow manages to coast through life like the rules don't apply to him. My parents enabled him, always. They bailed him out of credit card debt twice, helped him pay rent when he got kicked out of his last apartment, and even loaned him money for one of his failed business ideas that they never saw again. Despite all that, I stayed out of it. I figured, his life, his choices. I focused on my own lane. We weren't particularly close, Sean and I. I loved him in that distant, obligatory sibling way, but I never really respected him. He treated life like a game and people like chess pieces. Always charming when he needed something, dismissive once he got it. But whatever, that was his deal. I just didn't let it cross into mine. Or at least, I thought I didn't. Then came that night. I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday, one of those long, uneventful days where you just want to heat up leftovers, watch a dumb show, and go to bed. I came home from work, still in my wrinkled button-down, and my mom was waiting at the kitchen table. Dad sat next to her with his hands clasped like he was preparing for a funeral. The whole setup felt off immediately. They told me to sit. Said they needed to talk. I thought someone died. I swear, my stomach dropped before they even spoke. Mom started. Adam, sweetheart, your brother's in trouble. Serious trouble. I didn't say anything at first. Just looked between them, waiting for the rest. She glanced at Dad, who nodded like he was giving her silent permission to continue. He's being sued. Business stuff. Something about investors, fraud allegations. Alleged, Dad cut in. Just allegations right now. Right, Mom continued. But the legal fees are huge. And he might be facing jail time if he doesn't settle. I blinked. Slowly. Processing. Okay. So what does this have to do with me? Mom hesitated, then reached out and placed her hand on mine like she was trying to soften the blow. We used your savings. To help him. To keep him out of jail. At first, I genuinely didn't understand what she meant. My savings? How would they even? And then it clicked. The shared bank account. The one I'd opened years ago with Dad when I was still in college, before I had my own financial footing. I hadn't used it in years, but apparently, they had never removed themselves from it. I hadn't thought to check. I had my own account now, of course, but that old one still had a significant chunk in it. A buffer. A backup. I'd left it untouched on purpose. Like a hidden safety net in case the worst ever happened. And they drained it. I couldn't speak. I didn't even feel anger at first. Just silence. Shock. My ears were ringing. My chest felt hollow. Dad jumped in before I could process anything. You should feel good about this, son. You helped your family. You helped your brother. Mom nodded quickly. Exactly. It's not like you were using it yet. You still live here. And Sean, he needs this more than you do right now. I think the thing that stuck with me most wasn't the betrayal. It was the smile on her face when she said that. Like I was supposed to be proud. Like I should thank them for stealing what I spent over a decade building. I stood up. Slowly. My chair scraped against the tile with that awful, screeching sound. And I said nothing. Not a single word. Just walked upstairs, packed a duffel bag, grabbed my work laptop, and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask for an explanation or try to argue. I just walked out of that house like a ghost. I crashed on a friend's couch for a few nights, then rented a tiny studio downtown. Started over. I didn't answer their calls. Didn't reply to their texts. I blocked Sean entirely. I opened new accounts, changed passwords, froze everything they might still have access to. I reported the withdrawal too, filed a police report, and everything. But the officer said since it was technically a joint account, and I never removed their names, there wasn't much that could be done. Civil court maybe, but even then it was murky. So I let it go? Not for them, just for me. I couldn't afford the emotional drain. A year passed. I worked like a man possessed. Took on freelance contracts, side gigs, anything I could get my hands on. I was more motivated than I'd ever been. Not because I wanted revenge, at least not consciously, but because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't broken, that I could still win. Then, a few weeks ago, something happened. Something I didn't expect. Something that made me pause, scroll back through old messages I'd ignored, and finally open one that started with, "Adam, please, we need to talk." It was from my mom, and what it said changed everything. But I'll get to that. Because before that message, I found out something else, something that gave me the first true moment of satisfaction I'd felt in months. Sean had filed for bankruptcy. Turns out bailing him out once wasn't enough. He'd burned through everything, again. Legal trouble, debts, lawsuits, failed ventures, it all caught up to him. And my parents? They were drained. Maxed out. Selling jewelry, refinancing the house. Drowning. And me? I was closing on a house. In cash. A quiet, one-story bungalow on the edge of town with a little garden out back and a front porch that gets the morning sun. The kind of place I'd dreamed about since I was 16. Now they're calling me, leaving voicemails, saying they miss me. That family sticks together. That Sean's had a rough time, and we need to heal. I haven't responded. Not once. And I'd planned to keep it that way. Until something in that last message made me stop cold. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. And that's when everything shifted. Let me explain. I read the message 3 times before I even moved. It was around midnight. I was sitting at my new kitchen table, just me and a bowl of leftover pasta, the TV humming in the background with some mindless sitcom rerun I wasn't paying attention to. The message from my mom had come through at 11:42 p.m., late enough that it felt urgent, but not an emergency. My phone buzzed once, then fell silent. "Adam, we need to talk. It's about Sean. Please don't ignore this. He's getting desperate, and he's been saying things that worry us. I don't think he's in a good state of mind." I just stared at it. Not angry, not panicked, just cold, numb. My first thought wasn't even concern. It was, oh, now they're worried. Not when he burned through his 3rd business in 2 years. Not when he maxed out their credit cards. Not when he drained my savings like a gas station soda. Now they were concerned. I didn't respond. I turned my phone off, set it face down, and went to bed. The next morning, though, the message wouldn't leave me. I didn't want to care. But the thing is, I'd been raised to care. Guilt, for me, was a muscle, trained and exercised since I was old enough to pick up after my brother's messes. Be the bigger person, Adam. He's going through a rough time. You're more mature. He doesn't think things through. I heard those lines my whole life. They echoed now, involuntarily. I didn't reply, but I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I checked my brother's social media. His Instagram was gone. So was his Twitter. His Facebook? Abandoned. Last post was from months ago. A motivational quote overlaying a blurry photo of a luxury car. The kind of thing people post when they want you to think they're killing it. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Maybe I wanted proof that he really had hit bottom. Maybe I wanted to feel justified in my silence. Or maybe, deep down, I still needed to see it with my own eyes, that the golden boy had finally fallen from the pedestal they'd spent years reinforcing. Later that week, I got another message. This time from Dad. "Hey son, I know you're upset, but things are getting out of control with Sean. He's talking about you, saying things that don't make sense. He's paranoid. Please, just come by. Even if you don't want to talk to him, we just need to see you." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so wildly out of character for my dad to sound shaken. Growing up, he was the firm one. Not affectionate, not talkative, but always certain. The kind of guy who thought feelings were fine, as long as you kept them to yourself. Still, I ignored the message. I kept going to work, watering my plants, doing my weekly grocery runs. I kept pretending I didn't care. But then it started bleeding into my world. First, I got a call at work. My manager waved me over, her expression unreadable. "There's a man in the lobby asking for you," she said. "Says he's your brother. Is everything okay?" My blood ran cold. I hadn't told Sean where I worked. I hadn't told anyone in my family where I worked now. It was a deliberate choice. A boundary. A line. And he crossed it. I walked to the lobby, heart pounding, already rehearsing 1,000 ways to tell him to leave. But when I got there, he was gone. Just a confused receptionist and an empty chair. "He waited about 10 minutes, she said. "Then he left. Said you'd know why." I didn't. But the fact that he found me was enough to unsettle me for days. A week later, I came home to find an envelope wedged in my mailbox. No stamp. No address. Just my name, written in rushed, aggressive strokes. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. No signature. "You think you're better than us? Keep ignoring your family and see what happens. Blood is blood. Don't forget who you are." That night, I installed cameras. I didn't tell anyone. 2 days later, one caught footage of Sean walking up my driveway at 3:17 a.m. He didn't knock. Didn't leave anything. Just stood there, looking at the house, for almost 5 minutes. Then he left. That was the breaking point. Not the money. Not the betrayal. Not even the fact that my parents still defended him after everything. It was that look. That quiet, unspoken threat. The idea that, even after everything, he thought he still had access to my life. My space. My peace. So I called my parents. It was the first time they'd heard my voice in over a year. Mom picked up. "Adam, I saw Sean at my house," I said flatly. "At 3 in the morning. She gasped. "What? When?" "I have cameras," I replied. "I've had them for a while." He was just standing there. A pause. Then, "He's not well, honey. He's been under a lot of stress." "I don't care." I cut her off. "I'm calling the police next time. I don't want him near my home. I don't want any of you near my home." "Adam, please, he's your brother." "No," I said. "He's your son. He's your problem. And I am done pretending this family ever treated me like I mattered." I hung up. For a while, it was quiet. A few weeks passed. I started to feel normal again. I even began planting in the backyard. Tomatoes, some peppers, herbs. Things I never had space for before. Life began to feel like mine. Then the letters started. Official looking. Legal language. Accusations. Apparently, Sean had decided that I owed him money. That the money our parents gave him was always intended to be shared. That I had benefited from family generosity by living at home for years and therefore had no right to withhold my share, now that things had changed. It was laughable. Absurd. But it was also real. He was trying to sue me. The documents were shaky, no real claim, no legal grounding. But still they came. Again and again. Wasting my time. Forcing me to respond. Draining my money on legal consultations. I wanted to scream. To drive back to that old house and shout at all of them. Ask them how they raised a man who thought he could rob his brother blind and still act like he was the victim. But I didn't. I stayed calm. Strategic. I documented everything. And then, one night, I got the call that shifted the ground beneath my feet. It was from an unknown number. I almost let it ring out. But something made me answer. "Is this Adam Harper?" the voice asked. "Yes. My name is Valerie. I'm an attorney. I represent a former investor in Sean Harper's last company. I believe we may need to speak." "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, already bracing myself. "I think you may be listed as a financial backer in some of his documents. We have reason to believe he named you, without your consent, as a partner on certain transactions." My mind blanked. "What?" "He's trying to shift blame," she said. "And unfortunately, we've seen this before. He's filed some questionable paperwork, and it might involve fraud. I'd like to send you the documents." She did. And when I opened them, I felt everything drained from my body. There it was. My name. On paperwork I had never signed. Listed as a co-founder. A co-signer. On a failed company that owed over $200,000 to private lenders. My own brother had forged my name. Dragged me into his chaos. And my parents? They still weren't answering my calls. That was the moment the numbness broke. The rage, the betrayal, the years of quiet tolerance. It all surged forward like a tidal wave. I realized I hadn't just been robbed of money. I'd been robbed of peace, of trust, of family. And for the first time in my life, I stopped feeling guilty. I stopped asking if I was overreacting. And I started planning. Because if they thought I was going to roll over again, they were about to learn who I'd become since the last time they saw me. And that's when everything began to change. But not for the reasons they thought. If you've ever had everything you've worked for ripped out from under you, you'll know there's this weird silence that follows. It's not loud or dramatic, more like a quiet void. Like someone sucked the air out of your life and left you floating in the wreckage. That's where I was. After finding out Sean had forged my name, dragged me into his financial disaster, and started a paper trail that could have destroyed my credit, my job, and my future, I hit what felt like rock bottom. But it wasn't loud. There were no screams, no grand gestures, just silence. Long, hard silence. I didn't tell anyone, not my coworkers, not my few remaining friends. I think I was ashamed, even though logically I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I kept thinking, how did I not see this coming? How did I ever let them stay in my life this long? The days bled together. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit at my kitchen table, and just sit. Not read, not scroll, not move, just sit. Then I'd go to work, fake smiles, power through spreadsheets and meetings, come home, microwave dinner, and repeat. It was mechanical, hollow. My body was on autopilot, and my mind was stuck somewhere else entirely. The attorney I spoke to about the forged documents was kind, at least. She walked me through what needed to be done, file affidavits, submit identity verification, and prepare to defend myself if any of the creditors tried to pursue me. I did it all like a machine. Clinical, efficient, no emotion. But one night, around 2 a.m., I broke. I was lying on the couch, some old jazz playlist looping in the background, my laptop open in front of me. I was trying to sort through scanned copies of the fake paperwork Sean had submitted. I had to see them again, to believe they were real, to really feel what had happened. And there it was, my name, signed in that familiar looped signature. Only it wasn't mine. The slant was wrong. The curl of the D looked like his. The spacing was too neat. I'd seen him forge teacher notes when we were kids. I remembered how he used to practice my mom's signature for fun. He was always weirdly good at mimicry, at faking. And now he'd used it on me. I slammed the laptop shut and just lay there, staring at the ceiling, fists clenched so tight my fingers hurt. Not because of the money, or the lawsuit, or the forged documents, but because this wasn't some random scammer. It was my brother, and my parents still hadn't called. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to pretend they didn't know. It was like they'd vanished the moment I stopped being useful. That's when something inside me shifted. I wish I could tell you it was rage or some noble feeling of empowerment, but it wasn't. It was clarity. Cold, quiet clarity. I couldn't undo what had been done. I couldn't make them care. But I could make damn sure I never let them take anything from me again. The next morning, I woke up early and made a list. Just a small one. Not goals, not resolutions, just things I still had control over. Change my phone number. Set up alerts for any financial activity under my name. Transfer my house title into a trust. No one would ever be able to touch it. Start journaling, just to get things out of my head. Get a dog. That last one was impulsive, but I'd been thinking about it for a while. I wanted something in my life that felt uncomplicated, loyal, real. So I drove to a shelter that weekend and met Jasper. He was a mutt, some kind of retriever mix with floppy ears and eyes too big for his head. He walked right up to me, leaned against my leg, and just sighed. That was it. We picked each other. I brought him home that day. No drama, no doubt. With Jasper around, the silence felt less oppressive. He gave structure to my days, morning walks, feeding times, playtime in the backyard. He didn't care about lawsuits or betrayal. He just cared that I was there. Something about caring for him reminded me how to care for myself again. I started waking up earlier, cooking real food. Not fancy, just real. Eggs, toast, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables. I began tidying up the house more, decorating in ways I'd put off before. I repainted the living room, changed out the curtains, planted more things in the garden. Every small thing I did made the house feel more mine. And then I started running again. I used to run in college. It was my escape. I'd throw on some music and just go. No destination, no expectations. I hadn't done it in years. But one morning, I laced up my old sneakers and just ran. Not far, not fast, but enough to feel something again. Soon, it became a habit. Every morning, Jasper and I would jog through the neighborhood. I started sleeping better, thinking clearer. My appetite returned, and the fog, the heavy, silent fog, started to lift. That's when I began picking up freelance work again. I'd done web design on the side for years, never seriously, just side projects and favors. But now, I needed something more, something that was mine. So I revamped my old portfolio, reached out to old clients, and started advertising discreetly online. The demand was immediate. Apparently, people were always looking for affordable, competent help. And I wasn't just competent, I was focused. I worked long hours, sometimes too long, but I didn't mind. The work felt clean, honest. Every completed project chipped away at the feeling that Sean had taken everything from me. Because he hadn't. I still had my skills, my discipline, my instincts. And slowly, my savings started growing again. Not long after that, my story began to circulate in my small professional circle. A friend of a friend had heard about what Sean did. A client asked, carefully, if the legal stuff had cleared up. I told them yes, because by then, it had. The false documents had been formally discredited. My name had been cleared. The debt wasn't mine. And Sean, well, I hadn't heard from him directly since the lawsuit fizzled out. But I knew he was still flailing, burning bridges, dodging calls, whispering lies. He always had a story. But I had something else now, a reputation. Clients appreciated how meticulous I was, how I met deadlines without excuses, how I didn't oversell or sugarcoat things. Word spread. My small freelance hustle turned into a full-time business. I even hired a virtual assistant to help manage my growing workload. And the best part? It was all mine. No one to siphon off the credit. No one to guilt-trip me into compromise. No one standing behind me with open hands and empty promises. Just me, Jasper, and a slowly growing life that felt real. Then, one afternoon, maybe 6 months after the lawsuit, I got a knock at the door. A knock. Not a letter. Not a message. An actual knock. I paused. Jasper barked, ran to the door, tail up, alert. I opened it slowly, heart in my throat. And there he was. Sean. He looked different. Thinner. Paler. The charisma that used to ooze off him like cologne was gone. He looked worn. Desperate. Adam, he said, managing a thin smile. Hey man, can we talk? I didn't answer. Not right away. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us. He shifted awkwardly. I know you're mad. I get it. I messed up. But mom and dad, they're not doing great. And I need help. It was like he'd time traveled. Like nothing had changed. Like we were still in that kitchen, with him messing up and me expected to fix it. I didn't say a word. Jasper growled softly at my side. Sean glanced down, then back at me. Look, I know I messed up, but I'm your brother. We're family. You know I wouldn't be here if I wasn't out of options. I met his eyes, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I felt power, but I didn't slam the door. Not yet, because what I said next would decide everything, and I wanted to make it count. I didn't invite him in. I didn't even flinch. I just stood in the doorway of the home he tried to destroy from a distance, the one I bought in cash, with years of sweat, sacrifice, and rebuilding, and looked him in the eye. It was the first time I had really looked at him in a long time. Not through the lens of family, not through the guilt my parents drilled into me, but like a stranger, like a man who had tried to light my life on fire and was now standing in the ashes asking for a towel. I said nothing for a long time. Eventually, he laughed, soft, fake, nervous. Come on, man. I drove an hour to get here. You gonna make me stand on the porch like I'm some delivery guy? I blinked. You forged my name. He looked down, hands in his hoodie pocket. Yeah, I know. But you dragged me into your lawsuit. I continued, my voice flat, controlled. You pretended we were business partners. You nearly destroyed my credit. My name. I didn't think it would go that far, he said quickly. I was desperate. The investors, one of them threatened to show up at mom and dad's. I was just trying to buy time. I never thought they'd actually come after you. I let that sit there. Do you even understand what you did? I asked, my voice sharper now. You didn't just steal money. You tried to use me as a human shield. His face dropped. I wasn't trying to hurt you. But you did. He opened his mouth to argue. Probably had some carefully crafted story about how things got out of hand, or how he felt backed into a corner. But I wasn't interested in his story. Not anymore. Leave, I said. His eyes widened. What? You heard me. Adam, please, I wouldn't be here if I had any other choice. I don't care. He stepped forward, and Jasper barked again, louder this time. Sean flinched. Don't come back here, I said. Next time I won't be this polite. And then I closed the door in his face. He stayed there for a minute, maybe hoping I'd come back out. I watched him through the peephole, watched his jaw clench, watched him mutter something under his breath, watched him finally turn and walk back to his beat-up sedan and drive off. I didn't feel good after that. Not victorious. Not vindicated. I just felt ready. Ready to end this for good. Because I knew something now. He was slipping. He was desperate. And desperation made him reckless. Sloppy. I had spent years avoiding confrontation, dodging the messes my family made. But this time, I wasn't going to run. I was going to end it. And I was going to do it smart. The first thing I did was call Valerie, the attorney who had originally reached out when my name was forged. I gave her the update, told her Sean had shown up, and asked if any of the investors were still pursuing him. Her silence on the other end of the line was telling. Then she said, "You might want to come in." Turns out, several people were still after Sean. Some for unpaid loans, others for fake invoices and unpaid contractors. A few were trying to dig into his financial records, and were finding nothing but smoke and mirrors. But the one that caught my attention was a guy named Marcus Arnett. Not an investor. A partner. Supposedly, Marcus had sunk $85,000 into Sean's import business, and according to the paperwork Sean filed, I had co-signed for it. But I hadn't. Valerie handed me a copy of the contract Sean submitted in court. There was again my name, my forged signature. I stared at it for a long time. Then I asked, "Can I contact Marcus directly?" She raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I have a feeling he and I want the same thing. That night, I sent Marcus a message through his business website. It was short, polite, and direct. I told him I was not a part of Sean's business, had never signed any documents, and had legal proof that my name had been used without consent. Then I added one more thing. I believe you're not the only one Sean misled. If you're open to a conversation, I'd like to compare notes. He responded in under an hour. Marcus and I met 2 days later at a cafe near his office. He was a tall guy, mid-40s, well-dressed, but with the kind of weary eyes that suggested he'd been burned before, maybe not just by Sean. We ordered coffee, sat in a quiet corner, and started trading stories. It didn't take long to realize Sean had told him a completely fabricated version of our relationship. According to Sean, I was this silent financial backer, the logistics brain, and had years of experience in web development and back-end systems. He even gave Marcus a fake email under my name and replied to him with fake updates. He'd always say you were heads down coding, Marcus said, shaking his head. Now I know why you never responded directly. We compared documents. Every one of my signatures was a forgery. That's when Marcus leaned in and asked, "You ever think about suing him?" I let out a slow breath. I've thought about a lot of things. He nodded. I want him to pay. Not just money. I want everyone to know. Something clicked in that moment. A mutual understanding. Because that's what I wanted too. Not just revenge. Reputation. I wanted to burn down the myth of Sean Harper. The charming businessman. The misunderstood genius. The prodigal son. And I wanted to do it clean. So I made a plan. I started by gathering everything. Every forged document. Every fake email address. Every message my parents had sent me over the past year implying that they'd known more than they let on. I took screenshots. Downloaded backups. I kept it all in a secure folder labeled Fireproof. Then I reached out to others I suspected had been burned. Quietly. Carefully. Using the same strategy one used to build my freelance business. Precise. Professional, respectful. I didn't want chaos. I wanted evidence. And they came. A designer who had worked on Sean's brand and was never paid. A supplier who'd sent $12,000 in inventory and never saw a dime. A college kid who Sean had hired as an intern and stiffed for 6 months of unpaid training. Each story painted a clearer picture, and each one gave me another building block. Meanwhile, I kept quiet. I didn't respond to the 2 emails my mom finally sent. One was about family reconciliation. The other was a passive-aggressive reminder that no one's perfect, and we all make mistakes. I didn't reply, but I kept them, because they said a lot, especially when paired with bank records. Yeah, I got those too. With Marcus's help, I traced some of the payments Sean had received from investors. And guess where they went? My parents. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to prove that they weren't just enablers. They'd benefited. Quietly. Indirectly. And now they were pretending to be shocked that everything had gone wrong. It wasn't just Sean anymore. They were part of it too. By now, I had everything I needed. I had allies. I had evidence. I had a legal team who understood the pattern. I had patience. And above all, I had time. Sean didn't. He was running out of lies. Out of money. Out of people to charm. And he had no idea what was coming. But I wasn't finished setting the stage. Not yet. Because there was still one more move I had to make. And it involved going back. Back to the one place I swore I'd never return to. The house where it all began. And the people who thought I'd never come back stronger. It was early spring when I finally pulled into the old cul-de-sac I used to call home. The street hadn't changed much. Same cracked pavement, same overgrown hedges. The neighborhood had that familiar tired look of a place that peaked in the late 90s and had been quietly declining ever since. My parents' house sat at the end like a half-forgotten monument. Beige siding, green shutters, and a mailbox that still leaned to one side from a bike crash Sean had caused when we were kids. I hadn't been here in nearly 2 years. The last time, I'd walked out with nothing but a duffel bag, leaving behind more than just my room. I'd left my trust, my respect, and every last drop of loyalty I ever had for the people inside. But this time, I didn't come empty-handed. This time, I brought truth. And consequences. I parked my car across the street and just sat there for a moment, letting it all settle in. Jasper was in the back seat, head resting on the armrest, calm as ever. I reached back and scratched behind his ear. "You ready, bud?" He thumped his tail once. The front door opened before I even got out. My mother stood there, frozen in the doorway like she couldn't believe it was me. She looked older, tired, a little worn at the edges. Part of me wanted to feel something. Nostalgia, pity, anything. But I didn't. I got out of the car, leash in hand, and Jasper trotted beside me. As we crossed the street, Dad appeared behind her, arms folded. Sean wasn't in sight. Not yet. "Adam," Mom said, almost a whisper. "You're here." I stopped at the bottom of the steps. "We need to talk," I said. She nodded, stepping aside. Dad didn't move, didn't speak, but he didn't stop me, either. The house smelled the same. A mix of old wood, lemon cleaner, and whatever candles my mother still hoarded in glass jars. The living room was dim, curtains half drawn. A plate with 2 slices of toast sat uneaten on the coffee table. Sean's hoodie hung over the back of the recliner. I sat on the couch, Jasper settling at my feet. They remained standing, like they didn't know if this was a trap or a blessing. It was neither. "Where is he?" I asked. Mom glanced toward the hallway. "He's resting. He'll want to be awake for this." She looked like she wanted to protest, but something in my face must have shut it down. She disappeared down the hall. Minutes later, Sean shuffled in. He looked worse than before. Gaunt. Hollow-eyed. The once carefully groomed hair was now shaggy and limp. His hoodie hung off him like it belonged to someone else. He looked like a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks, and had no plans to. He didn't sit. "Thought I made it clear last time," he muttered. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "You did. But I came back for a reason." Dad shifted his weight. "If this is about the money." "It's not," I interrupted. "Not anymore." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Thick. Labeled. Color-coded. Evidence. I slid it onto the coffee table like a loaded gun. "This is everything," I said calmly. "Every forged document. Every fraudulent transaction. Every investor statement. All the fake contracts. Emails. Bank transfers. Including the ones you funneled through their accounts." I nodded at my parents. Sean's face paled. Mom sank into the armchair. "I've spent the last 6 months putting it all together," I continued. "With attorneys. With other victims. With legal authorities." Sean opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm not here to fight. Or argue. Or listen to another sob story about how you didn't mean it. I've heard enough. And frankly, I'm bored of the excuses." "What do you want?" Dad asked stiffly. That was the question, wasn't it? I stood, slow and steady. "I want 3 things," I said. 1. You are going to sign this." I pulled out a second document. A notarized statement, prepared in advance. It states that I had no involvement in any of your businesses. That every signature was forged. That I was never consulted, informed, or involved. It clears my name, legally, publicly, and permanently. Sean stared at it. "If I don't, then I hand over the folder," I said flatly. To every investor, every court, and every journalist I've spoken to. Because yes, there are journalists. Turns out people love a story about family betrayal and financial ruin, especially when it involves fake businesses and forged documents. Sean didn't move. 2. I continued. You will write a formal apology. I don't care if it's heartfelt, but it will be signed and witnessed. And it will be sent to every person you defrauded, including the college intern you stiffed and the single mom you conned into investing in your non-existent app. My mother looked like she wanted to cry. And 3, and this one's important, I want you all to leave me alone. Forever. No calls. No letters. No emails. You will never show up at my door again. If you do, I will treat it as harassment. And I will press charges. Silence. Not shocked silence. Defeated silence. The kind that settles when everyone in the room knows the truth. Sean eventually sat, face in his hands. Dad stared at the floor. Mom just faded, like she didn't want to be in her own skin anymore. Then Sean said, and if we agree to all of it? Then I walk away, I said. And I let you all do the same. I don't destroy you. I don't take you down in court. I don't make your names public. You get to disappear quietly. You get a chance to start over. Or not. I don't care. Another long pause. Then Sean reached for the pen. It took an hour. They read every page. Signed everything. My parents didn't say a word the entire time. When it was done, I gathered the papers, placed them carefully back into my folder, and stood. I meant what I said. I told them. I don't hate you. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I hope you figure yourselves out. But that's not my responsibility. I walked to the door. Jasper followed. As I reached for the handle, my mother finally spoke. Adam. I turned. She looked at me, tears slipping down her face. We thought he needed us more. That sentence landed like a stone in a still lake. I nodded once. That was your choice, I said. This is mine. And I left. In the weeks that followed, things moved quickly. The victims I'd contacted received their apologies. Legal documents were filed, clearing my name permanently. Marcus and I continued working together. He even referred a few clients my way. We weren't friends, exactly, but there was respect. And that was enough. Sean moved out of my parents' house not long after. No one's sure where he went. Some say he left the state. Others say he's couch surfing. I don't ask. I don't care. My parents sold the house 6 months later. I never learned where they moved. And I didn't look. As for me, business is good. The garden's thriving. Jasper just turned 3. I installed a new fence. Upgraded the kitchen. Got into photography. I host small dinners with friends. Real friends. People who don't ask for anything but presents. And the best part? I wake up every day with peace. Not because everything's perfect, but because I took back what was mine. My life. My name. My story. And I wrote the ending myself.